Hey guys, and welcome. The death of Brok in God of War Ragnarok definitely took myself by surprise, and I know that it took a lot of you guys by surprise as well. I and many of others loved Brok's character arc. He was the type of character that just took no stick from anyone, and wasn't afraid to call out anyone he thought was taking the group for a bit of a ride. Just like he did with Tyr, when 20 hours into the playthrough, he only just tells us about that secret pathway into Asgard, and, well, you guys know what happened next. Brok's death absolutely crushed his brother Sindri. With him being his only other family member, he always had someone to bounce off, a partner to do what he loves with every single day, and tackle his problems and issues with alongside. But when Brok died, Sindri just had no one else. He felt like a huge part of himself was just ripped away, for a reason that was very, very avoidable. Fake Tyr was only there because Atreus and Kratos went and found him, in which they led him back to their home, and he would seem to try and help them ever since. If Atreus just didn't look for Tyr, Brok might still be alive to this day. Sindri almost grew a form of resentment towards the group, but especially towards Kratos and Atreus. His actions, his facial expressions, and the stare down he gives Kratos towards the end of the game at Brok's funeral really shows the type of feelings that are crashing through his insides at that very moment. Anger, pain, disappointment, and pure frustration. Today, I want to discuss in more detail as to why many of you, and I've even had this thought as well, think Sindri could return as some form of villain in future God of War story expansions, if any, or actual games themselves. This is a very interesting conversation that I want to have with you guys in this video, because there were so many comments left on my previous video around Sindri and what happened to him after God of War Ragnarok, and a lot of you guys said this exact point, so I wanted to create an entire video on the matter. But before we do dive in, it would be greatly appreciated, guys, if you could leave a like on today's video, subscribe for more content coming each and every single day to the channel, covering story and lore across all of gaming. We're trying to hit 20,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We're quite far away from it at the moment, about a couple thousand away, but I have faith that we can do it. But without further ado, everyone, let's dive straight in. Okay, so I want to start off this section of the video by speaking about why the developers decided to kill Brok off as a character, and when they decided to do it. This was mentioned by Eric Williams within an IGN spoiler cast, and it was in fact pre-planned years and years ago. Take a listen to this.
But what it was going to be was still up in the air at that point, and then the first talk was like, okay, is it going to be 2 or 3 games? And then we kind of got to the point where we were like, I think we can do it in 2. And then Corey was very adamant, like, hey, I think 2 is the way to go. I think we can touch this up. And then at that moment, he gave me like 3 things that had to be done. And I said, okay. And now he's like, what are the 3 things? He's like, well, Ragnarok's going to happen. The kid's got to leave. And Brok's got to die. And I said, okay. And he goes, do you know why Brok needs to die? And I said, yeah, I remember we talked about this a long time ago, that he's the family dog. And so like that's why. And he said, yep. And then that was it, pretty much. Like, and then the rest of the time was like me just checking in with him, like, we're gonna do this, how do you feel about it? And he's like, that's good to go.
So you bookended the entire game with the deaths of family dogs.
Pretty much.
It's not really a fan favorite approach, but sure,
Yeah.
go off.
Brok's death was pre-decided when the game was in its conceptual stage, and it was already mentioned that Brok had to die, not that he could, that he had to. The reason was because Brok was so loved by the audience and the player that it was his death that no one would see coming, one that everyone would take very hard, and it would create that character arc and dynamic with Sindri as well, going from that, as mentioned, character where he just give and always there to help you, to this soulless stump of a character that's lost pretty much everything. Maybe a character you never thought that this would ever happen to, and of course it did. Eric describes Brok as the family dog, one that everybody loves, and when it does finally go, you really feel that pain. You've been around them for so long, 40 hours in the first game and around 20 to 30 hours in the second game. It's a long time to be around someone, to understand their personality and to get a feel for what sort of a person they are, learn their sense of humour, and just come to love that character. It's very similar to the Johnson death in Halo 3, and I know I mentioned this in my previous video as well. The character that everybody loved from the original Halo Combat Evolved going into Halo 2, and then for him to just die at the very last second in Halo 3, it was a massive kick in the face. Was it unavoidable? Sure, but does it make you remember and leave that impact on you? Of course it does. I have a feeling this is the exact same thing with God of War Ragnarok. Brock was killed off in the game because it's a statement. It's something that you are going to remember in years and years to come. Even in the next game, you're going to be thinking back to Brock. You're going to be wondering what's going on with Sindri. It's going to build that hype as to how Sindri's doing, where he is, and will he be that villain? But this is what Eric had to say about Sindri, where they're going with his character arc, and their thoughts on the matter entirely.
I think the one that a lot of people don't see coming is the Sindri transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's so keyed in the last game, germaphobe. We play that card really well early, where you're like, yep, he's that guy. He's almost like a caretaker, because he shows up and he's it's almost like when you go to school and he's like, you forgot your lunchbox at the bus, and then your mom comes running out, you know, because he's got that moment where he's like, and I got you these compasses, and then I got you a little lamp, you know, and he's always taking care of you, and he's like, and don't tell Brock, and all this kind of stuff, and you just see that, and then when he gets clipped on the head and you see him all bandaged up, because when the kid turns into the bear, you even feel more sorry for him, and you're like, oh man, like poor Sindri. But then when you see him with the gloves off, you know, and then the blood splattered all over, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen here? And he's like, he was always kind of like the thesis behind him is like the giving tree. You know, he's always giving and giving and giving and giving and giving until he's a stump. In that moment, when you see him at Brock's shop with Brock on the table, you're seeing the stump.
Look, as of now, Sindri is not planned to be making up with Kratos or Atreus after Ragnarok anytime soon. Maybe in the future, but not here. Even going into the example of stating that friends can fall out for years and years, with Eric using the time frame of say 10 to 20 years sometimes. It's just one of those things where you can fall out over silly things and just not contact each other. Even after you've 100% of the game, I don't think we're going to get Atreus or Sindri reuniting or making up. I just don't think that's going to happen. But now the real question is, will Sindri become a villain in future God of War games? Look, if by villain you mean someone that's going to battle against Kratos and Atreus, then no, I don't think he will. Do you really think that Sindri has the power to fight and beat Kratos, God, with mega strength, and then Atreus as well? It's just no chance. But it wouldn't just be them either, you know, it would also be the likes of Freya, her army, the Valkyrie, and others as well, so I don't think it's possible. But what I do think Sindri could do is have that level of resentment towards the two characters and want them to feel his pain like he did when he had Brock pass away. He would want them to understand what he is going or what he went through by inflicting the same pain on them as Odin caused him. Rather than being the villain to fight against, he might be the villain that works with the new antagonist, the one that feeds them information around the mask. What Atreus, Kratos and the group have gone through the first game and of course Ragnarok. The ability to create the new weaponry, armor, combat against the Leviathan axe. Of course, Sindri and Brock made the Mjolnir hammer for Thor. They also made the axe to combat the Mjolnir hammer for Thor. So why couldn't Sindri make something to combat the Leviathan axe for this new antagonist? There are so many possibilities as to things that could happen and could take place. And for me, rather than Sindri being the one to fight against us, I think he could be helping the new antagonist fight against us. This is why I think if Sindri is used against Kratos, it would be in this way. Sindri has so much information around everyone in the group from the first game and the second game. He spent enough time with them to know their strengths, their weaknesses. For an antagonist to know that information in battle, that's a huge advantage. And with him not really caring that much anymore, having the ability to also travel between realms, he can spy on the group, know exactly where they are, whilst keeping a stealthy and quiet approach to things. Always being one step ahead of them, which could be a huge bonus for this new antagonist. Personally, this would be a massive plot twist for me. I don't know if I'd like it, but it would be a massive plot twist. Then, once it goes too far, and then someone else is maybe close to death, or someone that he is close to in the time does die, Sindri will then realise that he is in the wrong and he's done the wrong thing, and helps them all fight back against this new antagonist. Or gives them information on what they're planning and things along those lines as well, and that's where we go and stop them. Of course, this is all theory, but this would be the direction that I think would make a lot of sense, and it wouldn't be that over-the-top thing where Sindri just grows another 17 foot in size and muscle and then starts to beat us up. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Like, Sindri is Sindri because of the way that he is, how good of a blacksmith he actually is, the knowledge that he has, the ability to travel between realms. This is his strengths, and they're really deadly strengths if he can use them against us. And in the aid of a new antagonist who can also fight us whilst also knowing this information, Kratos and the team could be in for a lot of trouble if Sindri walks this path. But, of course, everyone, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions down below. Will Sindri return as a villain in God of War's future story progression? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. But that is going to be it for today's video, everyone. I really hope you have enjoyed the video. A little bit of a different one today, a bit more of a sort of a theory video, but it's definitely one to talk about because it's a very interesting conversation as to where this character arc could go from here. Going from that one to help out everything, give you everything you need and overcompensate, to that one that's just sort of dull, has nothing left in them, no life really. Someone that's lost so much that they don't really care anymore. But then where will it go after that? It could rather go downhill or it could go uphill. It's interesting to theorize. Let me know down below. But everyone, I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you guys are brand new, like the video if you did enjoy, and we'll see you all in the very next video.